The Galactic Confederation had been particularly proud of their 10,000 years of peace. They flaunted it like a medal of honor pinned to the collective chest of their 17-member species, each of whom communicated in ways humans might find peculiar, through antenna vibrations, tentacle gestures, or telepathic wavelengths that bypass the need for sound altogether. Such diversity in communication methods sometimes led to overlooking the subtle but crucial nuances of human facial expressions and body language. "I fail to understand," said Grand Counselor Vexneri, his spinal ridges fluttering in what his species considered a display of supreme confusion. "It has been 8 standard cycles since first contact, and the humans continue to reject every diplomatic overture." The Supreme Commander, a towering Exorian with skin that shifted colors with her emotions, currently a dissatisfied purple, nodded in agreement. "They mock our ceremonial garments, refuse our trade protocols, and worst of all, they laugh. They laugh at us." The Grand Council chambers, a magnificent dome of transparent alloy that showcased the glory of distant stars, hosted representatives from all 17 Confederation species. They had gathered for the 47th emergency session regarding the Earth problem. Not that Earth itself was problematic. It was merely a small, unremarkable planet in an unremarkable solar system at the edge of an unremarkable galactic arm. Hardly worth the investment of time, if you asked most counselors. "Perhaps we should simply leave them to their own devices," suggested Ambassador Thriel, whose species communicated through complex pheromones that required sophisticated translators for others to understand. "After all, they are primitive. Give them another millennium or 2. The Supreme Commander's skin flashed an alarming red. "That is precisely the issue. We have monitored their technological progression. At their current rate, they will develop interstellar capabilities within decades, not millennia. Undisciplined expansion would threaten the stability we have maintained for 10,000 years. A silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. The Galactic Confederation prided itself on order, on protocol, on the proper way of doing things. Earth and its humans, with their chaotic nature and unpredictable decisions, represented everything they found disturbing. "I have received an intelligence report," the Supreme Commander continued, her tone dropping to a grave register that made even the most stoic counselors straighten in their seats. "Our xenosociologists have identified a military training facility in a region called Montana. It appears to be preparing human soldiers for potential space combat scenarios." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Military training for space combat? This was precisely the kind of aggressive development they feared. "Are you certain?" asked Counselor Maravalli, whose crystalline body structure refracted light in patterns of skepticism. "Our understanding of human infrastructure has been imperfect in the past. The report is conclusive," the Supreme Commander insisted, though in truth, the xenosociologists had based their analysis on satellite imagery and intercepted communications they only partially understood. More concerning still, this facility appears to have minimal defensive capabilities. "They are not expecting any response from us." Grand Strategist Kavorn, a Turavian known for their methodical analysis and rare understanding of non-Confederation cultures, raised a limb in caution. "Supreme Commander, if I may, humans are notoriously difficult to predict. Their history is saturated with conflicts we can scarcely comprehend. Are we certain we understand what we're seeing? Are you questioning our intelligence division?" The commander's skin rippled with indignant orange patches. "I am suggesting we exercise additional caution. The humans have a saying, measure twice, cut once." The Supreme Commander dismissed the concern with a gesture that sent ripples through her membrane-like appendages. "The consensus is clear. We must demonstrate our resolve. A precision strike on this military facility would send an unmistakable message. Join the Confederation and abide by our rules, or face consequences." A demonstration, then, Grand Counselor Vexneri concluded, his voice carrying the weight of authority that came with 10,000 years of peaceful governance. Targeted, precise, and above all, civilized. "We are not barbarians, after all." As the council chamber emptied, strategist Kavorn lingered, watching the holographic representation of Earth rotate slowly at the center of the room. The blue-green planet seemed so small, so insignificant. Yet something troubled the Travian analyst. "You seem concerned, strategist," observed a voice behind him. It belonged to diplomatic attaché Zivrix, one of the few Confederation officials who had actually set foot on Earth. "I cannot help but feel we are miscalculating," Kavorn admitted. "Humans do not think as we do. They do not value what we value. And most troublingly, they do not fear what we fear." Zivrix made a sound that approximated a sigh. "I spent 3 Earth months among them. They are paradoxical. They wage war on each other constantly, yet weep at the sight of their young in distress. They destroy their environment, yet compose poetry about its beauty. They are, in a word, unpredictable. And we are about to attack them," Kavorn said. "A precision strike," Zivrix corrected automatically, then paused. "Though I wonder if precision matters to those on the receiving end." Their conversation was interrupted by the Supreme Commander's final order echoing through the communication system. "Deploy the weapons. Let them know who is in charge." The inevitable righteousness was the Confederation's most advanced warship, a technological marvel that could travel between stars and days rather than years. Its weapons systems were designed for surgical precision, capable of targeting a structure as small as a single dwelling while leaving surrounding areas completely untouched. At least, that's what the technical specifications promised. Captain Norvalian stood on the command deck, his 4 arms working in perfect coordination as he prepared the ship for its demonstration of power. He had never participated in an actual military engagement. No one the Confederation had for millennia, but the simulations had been run thousands of times. The kinetic impactor would descend from orbit, its trajectory calculated to the millimeter, and strike the human military facility with just enough force to destroy it completely. No radiation, no long-term environmental damage, just a clean, civilized removal of a potential threat. "Target locked, Captain," reported the weapons officer, whose species perceived time slightly differently than others, allowing for exceptional timing in matters of precision. "The facility is currently active. We detect approximately 250 life forms within the primary structure." "Excellent," Norvalian responded. "The message will be clearer if their personnel are present to witness our capability." Countdown initiated. The kinetic impactor was essentially a metal rod, accelerated to tremendous speed using the ship's gravitational manipulation technology. Simple, elegant, and terrifyingly effective. At this velocity, it would strike with the force of a small nuclear weapon, but confined to an extremely localized area. 5 standard units until impact, announced the weapons officer. Norvalian felt a strange sensation in his thoracic cavity, something his species rarely experienced. The humans might have called it anxiety, or perhaps conscience. 4, 3, 2, 1. Impact. From orbit, there was nothing to see. No flash, no explosion, just the silent descent of the impactor followed by a small puff of dust visible from the ship's telescopic sensors. "Target neutralized," the weapons officer confirmed after a moment. "The primary structure has been completely demolished. Collateral damage minimal, as expected." Norvalian allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Clean, efficient, and clear. Surely now the humans would understand the futility of resistance. They would come to the negotiating table, humble and ready to accept the Confederation's generous terms of membership. "Send the standard communication package," he ordered. "Inform Earth's governments that this was merely a demonstration. Should they wish to avoid further such demonstrations, they need only comply with our previously stated requirements for Confederation membership." As the message was dispatched, Norvalian turned to his second-in-command. "I believe our work here is complete. Set course for Confederation Central. The Supreme Commander will want our first-hand report." Back at Confederation headquarters, the initial reports were received with satisfaction. The operation had gone exactly as planned. The military facility in Montana had been destroyed with pinpoint accuracy. Now, they merely needed to wait for the humans' inevitable capitulation. 12 hours passed with no response from Earth. This was somewhat puzzling, The Confederation's xenopsychologists had predicted an immediate reaction, but perhaps humans needed time to convene their various governing bodies. It was during this period of self-congratulation that the first troubling signals began to emerge. The Confederation's monitoring systems detected an unusual surge in Earth's communications networks. At first, the AI translators struggled to process the emotional content of the transmissions, but slowly, a disturbing picture emerged. Supreme Commander, a junior communications officer, interrupted the victory celebration in the Grand Council chambers. I believe you should see this. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered to life, showing images from Earth's information networks. The translation scrolled beneath the images. Orphanage destroyed in Montana. 234 children and 17 caregivers killed in unprovoked alien attack. The chamber fell silent. What is this? Orphanage? The Supreme Commander asked, her skin fading to an ashen gray. Grand Strategist Kavorn stepped forward, his voice hollow. It is a facility where human young who have lost their parents are cared for. Not a military installation. A shelter for children. The Supreme Commander's skin lost all color. There must be some mistake. Our intelligence was wrong, Kavor interrupted, breaking protocol in a way that would have been shocking under any other circumstances. The facility we destroyed was not a military training center. It was a home for human children without families. The implications settled over the council like a suffocating blanket. In the 10,000 years of Confederation history, not once had any member species deliberately harmed the young of another, even during the conflicts that preceded the Great Peace. It was the one universal taboo that transcended species boundaries. This changes nothing, insisted Counselor Dravax, though his voice lacked conviction. We issued proper warnings. If they chose to place their young in harm's way, we did not issue specific warnings about this strike, diplomatic attaché Zivrix corrected. And humans place great value on their young, perhaps more than any species I have encountered. This is the worst possible outcome. As if to confirm his assessment, the communications officer spoke again. Supreme Commander, we're detecting unusual activity in Earth's orbital defense systems. They appear to be mobilizing. Mobilizing? Impossible. They have no significant space military capability. The Supreme Commander declared, though uncertainty had crept into her voice. Another communication officer approached with visible distress. Supreme Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's being broadcast on all Confederation frequencies simultaneously. I don't know how they acquired our encryption protocols. Display it, ordered the Supreme Commander, her skin now a mottled pattern of fear and confusion. The holographic display changed to show a human, male, middle-aged by their standards, wearing what appeared to be a formal diplomatic uniform. His expression contained something the Confederation representatives had never seen directed at them before: cold, calculated hatred. To the leadership of the so-called Galactic Confederation, the human began, his voice translated by the AI systems into the standard Confederation communication format. 14 hours ago, you attacked and destroyed the Montana Children's Hope Center, killing 234 orphan children and 17 adult caregivers. There was no military value to this target. There was no warning. There was no declaration of hostilities. The human paused, and the silence stretched uncomfortably. The nations of Earth hereby issue the following ultimatum. All Confederation vessels will withdraw from Earth orbit and beyond the lunar perimeter within 14 Earth hours. Failure to comply will result in immediate commencement of total war against the Galactic Confederation and all its member species. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Total war. Grand Counselor Vexnary finally asked, "What do they mean by this term?" Strategist Kavorn's voice was grim. It is a human concept. It means war without restraint, economic, industrial, cultural, and military resources all directed toward a single goal: the complete defeat of the enemy. No restrictions, no rules of engagement, no mercy. "But that's barbaric," exclaimed Counselor Maravalli. And furthermore, it's laughable. They have one planet. We have 17 species across hundreds of worlds. With respect, Counselor Zivrix interjected, humans have a history unlike any Confederation species. They have fought each other constantly throughout their development. War is not an abstract concept to them. It is a fundamental part of their civilization, and they are very, very good at it. The Supreme Commander regained her composure, her skin flushing with determined purple. Nevertheless, we cannot allow such insolence. Prepare a response rejecting their ultimatum. We will explain the unfortunate misunderstanding and offer appropriate reparations, but we will not be threatened by a pre-interstellar species. Even as she spoke, reports began flooding in from Earth observation posts. Something unprecedented was happening on the small blue-green planet. Nations that had been in conflict for centuries were suddenly coordinating military resources. Private space companies were converting their vessels for potential combat roles. Nuclear arsenals were being readied, communication. Satellites repositioned. Supreme Commander, a strategic analyst reported with evident alarm. Human space vessels are converging from all orbital positions. They appear to be grouping for some kind of coordinated action. That's impossible, she insisted. Their spacecraft are primitive, incapable of posing any threat to Confederation vessels. They have modified them, the analyst continued. We're detecting unusual energy signatures and what appear to be hastily mounted weapon systems. They're innovating at an alarming rate. Diplomatic attaché Zivrix stepped forward. Supreme Commander, I strongly advise complying with their withdrawal demand. We have made a catastrophic error. The death of their young is not something humans will negotiate over or forgive easily. We need time to find a diplomatic solution. The Supreme Commander hesitated, her authority suddenly feeling less absolute than it had just hours before. Very well. Issue the withdrawal order to all Confederation vessels in the Sol system, but maintain monitoring capabilities at the system's edge. If they attempt to follow us beyond their solar system, we'll be forced to take more definitive action. As the orders went out, Grand Strategist Kavorn approached the Supreme Commander privately. This will not be the end of it, he warned. You don't understand humans as I do. They don't think like us. The Confederation has maintained peace for 10,000 years because all member species share certain fundamental values. Humans, their values are different, and we have just violated perhaps their most sacred one. The Supreme Commander's skin darkened with irritation. What would you have me do, strategist? Surrender the entire Confederation to a single planetary species because of an unfortunate targeting error? No, Kavorn replied. I would have you prepare for the possibility that this species, which we dismissed as primitive and insignificant, may be more dangerous than anything the Confederation has faced in its 10 millennia of existence. The Supreme Commander scoffed, but as she turned away, her skin betrayed her with flickers of fear. As the 14-hour deadline approached, Confederation vessels hastily withdrew beyond Earth's moon, maintaining minimal observation capabilities at the farthest reaches of the Sol system. The Supreme Commander expected that would be the end of it, a brief, regrettable incident that would soon be forgotten as more rational heads prevailed on Earth. She was wrong. Precisely as the deadline expired, something unprecedented occurred. Human spacecraft, hundreds of them, suddenly appeared at the edge of the Sol system, far beyond where they should have been capable of traveling in such a short time. More alarmingly, they didn't stop there. Multiple vessels vanished from sensors, only to reappear near Proxima Centauri, the closest star to Sol. How is this possible? The Supreme Commander demanded, watching the tactical display with growing horror. They don't have faster-than-light capability. It appears they do now, Strategist Kavorn replied grimly. Or they reverse-engineered something from studying our ships. Either way, they're no longer confined to their solar system. Alert all Confederation outposts, the Supreme Commander ordered, her composure fracturing. All military vessels are to converge on Proxima Centauri immediately. We must contain this before. Her orders were interrupted by a cascade of incoming emergency transmissions. Not just from Proxima Centauri but from dozens of systems simultaneously. Supreme Commander, the communications officer's voice trembled. We're receiving distress calls from multiple Confederation worlds. Human vessels have appeared in their orbits. They're broadcasting images of the destroyed orphanage on all frequencies. The tactical display transformed into a nightmare. Human ships weren't just at Proxima Centauri. They were everywhere, having appeared simultaneously at key systems throughout Confederation space. Somehow, they had mapped the locations of critical Confederation worlds and launched a coordinated attack that bypassed all defensive perimeters. Impossible, the Supreme Commander whispered. Even with faster-than-light travel, they couldn't have coordinated this. They couldn't have known all these locations. They've been studying us, Zivrix said, comprehension dawning on his features. All those years of rejecting our diplomatic overtures, they were gathering intelligence, preparing contingencies. They expected something like this might happen. Reports flooded in from across Confederation space. Human vessels were not actually firing on civilian targets. They were simply appearing in overwhelming numbers, broadcasting their message, and targeting military installations with surgical precision. The message was always the same. Footage of the destroyed orphanage, followed by a simple question in all Confederation languages. Are you willing to die for those who killed our children? The effect was devastating. Across 17 species and hundreds of worlds, the same moral revulsion swept through civilian populations. The Confederation's own citizens began questioning their leadership. Military personnel refused orders. Several member worlds formally announced they would take no part in hostilities against Earth and were withdrawing from Confederation command structure until those responsible for the orphanage attack were held accountable. Within 72 hours, the carefully maintained unity of the Galactic Confederation began to fracture. The Supreme Commander watched in disbelief as the tactical display showed more and more systems going dark, not because they had fallen to human forces, but because they were refusing to acknowledge Confederation authority. This is absurd, she raged, her skin flashing chaotic patterns of stress and anger. They're one species with one planet. How are they doing this? Because they understand something we forgot 10,000 years ago, Kavorn replied softly. How to fight a war not just with weapons, but with symbols and moral authority. The orphanage wasn't just a tragedy to them. It's now a banner, a cause that unifies them and divides us. As if to underscore his point, a new report arrived. Human forces had penetrated the Confederation's central communication hub. They hadn't destroyed it. Instead, they had hijacked it, broadcasting images of teddy bears and children's toys recovered from the Montana orphanage throughout Confederation space. The simple stuffed animals had become a war flag, a symbol the human ships now displayed prominently on their hulls as they systematically dismantled the Confederation's military infrastructure. We need to strike back decisively, the Supreme Commander insisted. Gather our remaining loyal forces. Target Earth directly. If we destroy their homeworld, then we prove them right about us, Zivrix interrupted. We confirm to every species in the Confederation that we are exactly what the humans claim. Killers of children who would commit genocide rather than admit a mistake. Before the Supreme Commander could respond, the communication system activated again. This time, the human face that appeared was different, female, with features that conveyed authority and absolute resolve. This message is for whoever remains in command of Confederation forces, she began. In the 6 days since you murdered our children, we have disabled 60% of your military capabilities without taking a single Confederation life. This demonstrates two things, our restraint and your vulnerability. The woman's eyes seemed to bore directly into the Supreme Commander. We could continue until nothing remains of your 10,000-year empire. Or you can accept the following terms. First, immediate surrender of all individuals involved in the decision to attack the Montana Children's Hope Center, from intelligence analysts to military commanders. Second, dissolution of the current Confederation governing structure. Third, acceptance of human oversight in the formation of a new interstellar governing body. She paused, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. "We do not desire the destruction of your civilizations or species, but we will not tolerate the existence of a power structure that believes it can kill our children with impunity. You have 6 hours to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the Confederation leadership staring at each other in stunned silence. "We cannot possibly accept these terms," the Supreme Commander finally declared, though her voice lacked conviction. "It will be the end of everything we've built." "That end is already here," Kavorn said quietly. "The question now is whether we face it with dignity or destroy ourselves completely through pride." Before anyone could respond, the chamber's security systems were suddenly compromised. The massive doors slid open, revealing a contingent of human soldiers flanking a single unarmed man in a simple dark uniform. How they had penetrated the most secure facility in Confederation space without triggering any alarms was yet another devastating demonstration of capabilities the Confederation had never imagined humans possessing. "I am General Thomas Whitaker, Earth Defense Force," the man announced without preamble. "I'm here to accept your surrender and take custody of those responsible for the Montana attack." The Supreme Commander's skin blanched to pure white, the color of absolute shock in her species. "How did you get here?" "This is impossible." The general's smile contained no warmth. "You've been saying that a lot lately, I imagine." "Impossible is just a word for things you haven't seen humans do yet." He surveyed the room with cold efficiency. "The children of Earth are waiting for justice. I suggest you don't keep them waiting any longer." And so it was that the 10,000-year reign of the Galactic Confederation ended not with a grand last stand, but with a procession of once mighty leaders being escorted onto human vessels, bound for Earth and whatever justice awaited them there. The former Supreme Commander, now simply Prisoner Lorani of the Axorian species, watched through a viewport as the magnificent Confederation central habitat receded into the distance. "What will happen to us?" she asked the human guard. "You'll stand trial," he replied, his tone neutral but not cruel. "And then you'll serve your sentence where it matters most." "Where is that?" "Montana," he said simply. True to the guard's word, the architects of the Orphanage attack found themselves transported not to execution chambers or standard prisons, but to the very site of their greatest crime. Where the Montana Children's Hope Center had once stood, a massive reconstruction project was underway. The facility being built dwarfed the original, with sprawling grounds and multiple buildings designed to house and care for thousands of children, not just hundreds. And the former Confederation leadership, from the Supreme Commander to the intelligence analysts who had misidentified the target, were put to work there, not as slaves or under torture, but as laborers and eventually as caregivers, tasked with helping to rebuild what they had destroyed, both literally and figuratively. "This is your justice," explained Dr. Eleanor Hayes, the project's director, as she assigned their duties. "Not revenge, but restoration. Not death, but life. You took these children from us. Now you will help us care for others like them." Meanwhile, throughout what had once been Confederation space, a new order was taking shape. The Montana Accord, as it came to be known, established a looser federation of worlds governed by principles that emphasized autonomy, rights of self-determination, and above all, absolute prohibition against targeting the young of any species. Representatives from former Confederation worlds arrived on Earth to sign this new agreement, each one first touring the rebuilt orphanage, now named the Galactic Children's Memorial Center, and pausing at the central monument. A simple statue of a human child holding a teddy bear, surrounded by the names of the 234 children and 17 caregivers who had perished in the attack. The inscription at the base read, "Here we remember 234 children and the civilization that died with them. Humanity always keeps its promise to protect and avenge its children." As years passed, the former Confederation leaders found something unexpected in their service: redemption. Many, including the former Supreme Commander, chose to remain at the center even after their formal sentences ended, having formed bonds with the children they now helped raise. "I still don't fully understand humans," the former Supreme Commander confessed to Dr. Hayes one evening as they watched children playing in the center's gardens. In 10,000 years of Confederation history, we never encountered a species that could be simultaneously so terrible in war and so gentle in peace. Perhaps that's why you never understood us, Hayes replied. You saw these as contradictions, when for us, they're two sides of the same impulse. To protect what we love, we will destroy anything that threatens it. But once the threat is gone, we prefer to build rather than destroy. Throughout the galaxy, the lesson had been learned and absorbed into the collective consciousness of all spacefaring species. Humans would go to extraordinary lengths to protect their children, and even further to avenge them. The teddy bear, once a simple child's toy, had become a symbol recognized across thousands of worlds, a warning that behind its soft exterior lay the potential for overwhelming force. Perhaps it was fear that maintained the peace that followed, but over time, that fear gave way to something resembling respect, and eventually to genuine cooperation. The former Confederation species discovered that humans, for all their capacity for violence when provoked, were equally capable of forgiveness and friendship, particularly when their children were safe. At the Galactic Children's Memorial Center, a new tradition emerged. Each year, on the anniversary of the attack, children from across Earth and eventually from other worlds gathered to release lanterns into the night sky, one for each life lost. And as these lights ascended toward the stars, they illuminated a simple truth that would shape interstellar relations for millennia to come. The universe doesn't care about your feelings, but humans do care about their children enough to burn the stars if necessary.